if we talk about going from experiencing trauma or being in this like victim mode towards healing, like how does that transition look like, or what are some of the things that even before somebody is, let's say, starting their journey, how they know that, or like maybe in your experience, how did you know that, okay, or now looking back, you probably at the moment didn't know that, but looking back, like what were some of the signs that you knew that you're about to enter the stage of like healing? Because we can be in victim mode without even being aware that I'm currently
Yeah.
like, I'm being a victim.
Oh, I totally was that. I was totally a victim mindset for sure. So I started out having a complete victim mindset, which means I didn't do anything wrong. I could point my finger at everybody else and give a reason why things were happening in my life, and it was everybody else's life, and I was taking zero responsibility for my behavior and what was going on. And of course, I got a lot of pushback on that, and rightfully so. And so that made me kind of slow down, because I did have self-awareness, not to the degree that I do now, but I certainly, like, I didn't like the way I felt, and I didn't like the reactions I was getting from people. And I knew the common denominator was me. And so I started
How
have
did
to,
that feel to even realize that?
um, at first it was hard. At first it made me feel like I was defective, that am I ever going to get this right? But then with time, in the beginning of the healing, I started recognizing, oh, that means I'm actually empowered. That means I actually can change this. I can change my behavior. I can change how I think. I can change how I feel. I just didn't
Yeah.
know how that looked. But that was kind of the first little glimmer of light for me, and actually was motivating for me, is that I just wasn't the victim and just I was at the mercy of everybody else and everything else. I actually could take that power and I could manage it myself. I just had to learn how.
Was there something that helped you to realize that? Because I think that's really important point in that transition towards starting to take steps towards healing. Because many times you might even know that I need to do some work, or I'm at fault, things like that, and nothing really happens. But then when you start to get that sense of, oh, actually, I have, even if at first it feels like tiny amount of power to change something or control or ability, um, that can really start to slowly build up that momentum towards like making that change. Was there something that helped you to maybe get that sense or realization that, oh, actually, I myself, I can do something about it, or I have the power to start to change something?
I don't remember anything necessarily happening. I just think it was my awareness. I think that I I will say I was desperate. I was desperate to have things different. I just know I was desperate to live a different life, to feel a different way, to behave a different way. And I don't remember any particular thing setting that off, other than I was desperate. I just wanted it to be different. I didn't want to live the way I was living.
So it was so bad that the alternative of going through the discomfort and pain and all that through growth, or let's say at this point healing, um it felt more desirable than being where you are.
Yes. Yes. Yeah. And in all that, there was the people pleasing, right? And so I hated the way I felt. I hated the way I behaved. And I will say hate, I did. But I really hated the way I could make others people feel. I didn't like that. That really tore at my heartstrings. But I didn't feel like, well, for a long time, I didn't have control because I didn't choose to have control over it. And I think that was more motivating to me than really taking care of myself. It was more motivating to me to get people to like me, because I had a mindset that nobody liked me.
Actually, it would make sense because I think at that stage there's not a lot of amount of self-love or self-respect
Mm-hmm.
to have you as a reason to change, but it's more like the pain of seeing how the way you are affects others that is like, ow.
Yep. Yep.
I just have to change it, because otherwise,
Yeah.
like, I will just keep and sometimes it might be just hurting people or being like a burden on people,
Yes.
things like that.
Mm-hmm.
And with that, I think there is that when it comes to social interactions, the importance of guilt and shame in these situations where, and this actually is an interesting point, because in this kind of scenario, guilt and shame might actually be something good because it was a trigger to start to change.
Yes. Agreed. Yeah. It was definitely, it was overwhelming. And yeah, I think you're right. In a small, definitely guilt, definitely shame. Yeah. And I had many sleepless nights going over and over in my head, the scenario and how I could have done it different. And I wouldn't sleep. I mean, it was just this vicious cycle. It really was. I think, okay, next time I'll do it different. But again, I hadn't done the deep healing in order to get me to see it really the way I needed to and to behave differently.
Yeah. So pretty much what helps to, or let's say in your case, what helped to start that journey was that sense of like, I'm done. Like with whatever is the situation, I'm just done. And whatever discomfort might be on the other end of starting to heal or do any kind of work, that seemed less scary or intimidating than just staying where you are, that you just stay there so long that the pain had built up to a point where it's like, I'm just done. Like,
yes.
Okay.
Absolutely. I used to joke about, I'm done. I always had that statement, like when I get to a certain point, I'm done. And I was done. Yeah.